Chapter 27. Alorea's Lair. "Nobody move," Ambrose hissed. "Listen." They stood still and silent. The dying sounds of their last noises seemed to echo away from them, below them. Harry said, "Lumos." Nothing happened. "Lumos! Lumos Maxima!" There was still no light. "No wand magic," came Ron's voice. "Allow me to assist," Ambrose's voice echoed in the darkness. A beam of light shone out, illuminating the door opposite. "How?" Harry began. "A contrivance known as an electric torch or flashlight," Ambrose explained. "One never knows when one might need such a thing. I thought it prudent." By the light of Ambrose's torch, they discovered their horrifying predicament. Each of them was standing atop a narrow column, the foot of which was hidden in the darkness of the depths far below, beyond the reach of the electric light. Tally, once again in human form, was closest to the door they'd been heading towards. Lydia screamed. "No! Oh no! Oh no!" she kept sobbing. "Lydia," Ambrose reassured her, "crouch down and hold the edges of the column. That's the safest way." "Seems this Alorea's calling the shots," Toby snarled. "On the plus side," Ambrose hastened to say, "she has chosen not to simply kill us." "Well, yeah, I guess," Toby began. "And," Ambrose continued, "she may have no reason to kill most of us, if it is Harry whom she is after. I'm sure Lydia is safe." The others took the hint and said nothing to make Lydia more anxious. "I'm closest to the door," said Tally. "Just not quite close enough." "How are you at leaping when you're a cat?" Harry asked her. "A whole lot better than as a person," she pondered. "I mean, cats are pretty good at that sort of thing." "If you leapt as a human and turned into a cat, I wonder if your momentum would carry you further," Ambrose said. "What do you think, Lydia?" Lydia was crouching down, with her eyes shut, visibly shivering. It depends," she struggled to say. "If it's the momentum that's conserved, then yes, but if it's the velocity that stays the same, be better as a cat turning into a human." "I'm not sure that helps," said Ron. Ambrose shook his head at him. "I cannot imagine you jumping then speeding up as you change," said Ambrose. "But I can see the speed staying the same. It is merely a guess, however." "Well," said Tally with a note of resignation, "we know one thing. I'll need hands to open the door when I get there. Cat or human, it's going to have to be." "Wait," Harry warned. "Then what?" "We'll have to see," Tally sighed. "Hurry," Lydia whimpered. "Wish me luck," said Tally, and promptly turned back into the black cat again. There were murmurs of good luck, and they all fell silent. The cat crouched. The others could see her muscles tense. Her tail swished a few times. Then she sprang. In mid-leap, she turned back into Tally, who stretched for the door handle. She caught the handle and her feet scrambled for the small ledge at the foot of the doorway. It was no more than 6 or 7 centimetres wide, but, pulling on the handle with her right hand, she managed to steady herself. The others released a huge gust of relief. Tally swapped hands on the handle and held on to the door frame with her right. Pulling on the frame and pushing down on the handle, she was able to open the door forwards. As soon as the door opened, the light, and thankfully the floor, reappeared. The room was restored, as it had been when they first walked into it. Lydia was curled up on the wooden floor, sobbing. Ambrose crouched down, lifted her, and hugged her to him. They all waited until Lydia was able to stand and walk. Tally turned back into the cat as they gathered around the doorway. "More danger, do we think?" Ambrose asked Harry in a hushed voice. "You know the best way to face danger, Ambrose," Harry replied. "Vicariously?" Ambrose ventured. "Head on," Harry corrected him. Ambrose sighed and muttered, "I knew there would be a catch." They followed Tally into the next room. It was another living space with sofas, armchairs and tables, this time with a carpeted floor. It was larger than the first room and of a similar style, but quite bland. It was more like a showroom than a space where people had lived. The door they had come through clicked shut behind them. Almost at once, the room began to fill with water. It rose quickly around their legs, eerily still, as though they were being lowered into it, rather than it pouring in from somewhere else. It was cold, not icy, but enough to be a shock as it crept up their legs. Lydia took off her shoes and jacket. Some of them gasped as the cold hit their thighs. Toby was panting rapidly. Lydia crouched down, leant forwards, and started to swim towards the far door. More gasps followed. Some of the gasps were from the cold hitting their midriffs, others from the realization that the far wall was moving away from them. Tally, who was doggy paddling in her cat form, changed back into a human, with a splashing and flailing of limbs. She waded back to Toby, who was standing with his arms over his head. The water was up to his chest. Harry had started to swim after Lydia. The others crowded towards Toby. He was making a whimpering noise with each breath. Ron turned to see where the two swimmers were. The far wall was the length of a sports hall away from them now. He could see Harry splashing about as he swam. Lydia must have been on the far side of him. They were all out of their depth by now and treading water. Toby was bobbing up and down, swallowing a lot of water. Tally was trying to calm him, to talk some sense back into him. The lights went out. In the moment before the dark came down like a shutter, Harry saw Lydia. She was way ahead of him now, moving with barely any splashing. The wall was still somewhere ahead and receding from Harry, but Lydia appeared to be gaining on it. Within seconds of the blackness descending, Harry felt his arm hit the ceiling. A few seconds later, his head bumped against it. He rolled over and took a few breaths, then one last deep one which he held. Lydia had done the same. She could see nothing at all, but she knew where the door had been. She had been closing on it, but now she had no idea how quickly it was moving away, nor how fast she was swimming. Was she even still heading in the same direction? She tried to swim faster, but the muscles in her arms were aching, and her chest was burning inside from the pressure of her held breath. She let out a little air to relieve the pressure. The desire to breathe in swelled. It started to take over her senses. All she knew was she needed to breathe, but there was nothing there except water. Her fingertips touched something solid. With a strange elation, she kicked her legs and swept her arms as hard as she still could through the pain, forwards and down. Her hands felt an edge, forwards and down, one more time. She scrabbled with both hands down the edge of the doorframe. One more time, sweep and kick, forwards and down. Her hands struck an awkward shape. She scrabbled again. Her chest burned, her arms ached. She grasped the handle. Her limbs flailed around. She felt the handle turn. Instantly, she was standing on her bare feet, on a deep carpet. The light was on. Her throat rasping for sweet breath. Her legs buckled and she crumpled to the floor. Looking around, the others were close by. They were gasping, laughing, retching. Harry was closest to her. He was coughing and panting. The others were behind him in a huddle around Toby. He was flat on the floor, retching and shaking violently. Tally was beside him, on her knees, making soothing noises. Ron was kneeling too, blinking stupidly and laughing with relief. Lydia's uncle was already on his feet, picking up her shoes and jacket. He walked over to her, smiling with tears in his eyes. "Well done, littlest Lydia," he said, as he dropped her things again to hug her. "I told your mother letting you join the swimming team was a good idea. Admittedly, when I said being a good swimmer might come in handy one day, this was not exactly what I had envisaged." She laughed, more with relief than mirth. "Well done, Lydia," Harry said as he joined them. "Thank you. You saved us all. You're an amazing swimmer." Ambrose scowled at the door. "Head on?" he asked Harry, an eyebrow raised. Harry winked. Ugh, Ambrose muttered. The next room was different from the first two. It was white, unadorned and clinical. Between them and the opposite door stood dozens of white boxes, each on 4 white legs. Ron walked cautiously to the nearest box and looked down into it. Inside was a baby, no more than a few weeks old, covered with a pale blue blanket up to its neck. The next crib held another, this one with a yellow blanket. They're babies, Ron told the others. As they moved forward to take a look, the door behind them clicked shut. Ambrose reached inside his jacket for the torch, but this time the lights did not go out. Just a room full of babies. Ron sounded as though he was about to laugh. Look! Tally's voice cracked with fear. Near the centre of the room, a baby's head had appeared over the edge of its crib, surrounded by several black, hairy, multi-jointed legs. Ron jumped backwards. Oh, no, 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 Lydia cried. From each crib, a baby's head began to appear, long spidery legs surrounding it. The baby, who had risen from the middle cot, opened its mouth as if to cry. No sound issued, but 2 bright red pincers squeezed their way out. The baby's eyes were topped by 6 other eyes across its brow. Its legs flexed on the edge of the cot a couple of times before it sprang upwards and forwards, dropping onto the floor. Lydia squealed as the other babies began to do likewise, then to scramble across the slippery smooth floor towards them. Their hairy legs made a rustling and clattering sound on the hard floor. From their pincered mouths came high, chittering noises. The bright glare of the white room was now sullied with a horizontal cloud of seething, scrambling darkness. Ambrose grabbed the closest cot and used it to fend off one of the creatures. Then he raised it over his head and smashed it down on the floor. He broke the wooden legs off the cot and handed them to the others as weapons. Harry did the same, but smashed the cot down onto one of the abominations. It shrieked, the hideous sound holding something of the cry of an infant. The group backed towards the corner of the room where the door had been. We need to get someone across to the door at the far side, Harry half shouted, over the rising clamour from the spider creatures. I'll go, said Toby. You'll get torn apart, Tally protested. I got an idea, her brother assured her. Trust me. I'll come with you, Harry said. Ron? Ron was grim-faced, shivering and as pale as death even to his lips. He was standing beside Lydia, holding her hand. She did not look any better than he did. The chicken sat quietly in the crook of her other arm. Tally, Ambrose, Harry changed direction. Protect Lydia. I'll go with Toby and try to beat a path to the other door. As Harry turned, Toby ran forwards, knocking first one then another creature aside. He jumped up on the edge of the nearest crib, then leapt across onto the next. Harry followed as best he could, swinging the table legs in his hands to swipe the spiders to either side as he went. Ambrose and Tally backed the others into the corner, then turned to protect them, jabbing and swinging the wooden legs at their attackers. Toby somersaulted from a crib and onto the floor. Harry charged after him, crashing through the cots, knocking them flying. Toby leapt and did a forward roll to clear 2 of the spider creatures, but another ran at him from the side and slashed his arms with its pincers. No! Bellowed Harry, lashing out at the spider. His crib legs swept the creature through the air, crumpling it against the wall. Go on, Toby, he shouted. You're our only chance. The young American needed no further prompting. He sprang once more onto the top of a crib. Then Harry lost sight of him as a nauseating baby-headed spider jumped from the back of one of its fellows and onto Harry's face. Harry fell over backwards, landing with a sickening crunch on top of one or more of the other creatures behind him. The light of the room darkened as spiders swarmed and crowded over him. A dead-eyed pink face with blood-red pincers loomed over him, too close for Harry to focus. Somewhere else, Toby's hand found the door handle and turned it.